Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Executive Leaders Network and our webinar today. Thank you all for taking some time out of your day to hear about digital finance transformation. Businesses have long been adopting technology to facilitate remote working, drive efficiencies, and better compete in the marketplace. However, the digitalization of many finance processes, such as employee expenses and invoices, are still not the norm. So why should businesses look to adopt such technology and replace inefficient, paper-based processes with automated solutions? Today, we are joined by Natalie Wignall, Solutions Specialist from SAP, to discuss Is Now the Time to Embrace Finance Digital Transformation? So I want to welcome Natalie to the stage, and I will pass this over to you.
Thank you for setting up the presentation for us today, and thank you to everybody who's joined onto the line. We really appreciate you taking the time out today to join us to learn a little bit more about digital transformation and embracing finance technology. I'm going to get the slides up now for us to get started with, and whilst I'm doing that, I wanted to draw your attention to a few different things that you'll see along the right hand side of your screen. So first of all, as we're going through the presentation today, you might have some questions for me. So please do write them down in the chat box. All of your questions will be privately received to me, and we will be addressing those during the Q&A session later on today. You'll also see some polls that are interactive as we go through, so please do take part in this. We'd love to hear your thoughts as we go through. And finally, I'll be calling out some opportunities for you to download some content as well related to the information today. So please do take a look at those on the website, and hopefully you'll get the most out of the session. So, all about finance digital transformation. Businesses have long been adopting technology to facilitate remote working, to drive efficiencies, and to better compete in the marketplace. However, the digitalisation of many finance processes, such as employee expenses and purchase invoices, are still not the norm and lag behind many other functions. And given the current business climate and the challenges that it's raised for businesses, it's now the time to embrace digital transformation. And over the next 30 minutes or so, we're going to be looking at how you can adopt digital transformation to empower your employees to work remotely, whilst improving cost controls, cash flow, and visibility into spend by replacing inefficient and paper-based or spreadsheet-based processes with automated solutions. And I'm going to be focusing on two processes in particular: the expense claim and reimbursement process and the accounts payable invoice process. So a little bit about myself. I'm Natalie Wignall. I am one of the solution specialists here at SAP. I've been with the organisation for about 4 years now, and I've worked with a range of different organisations who've been looking to revitalise and revamp their finance processes. So really, during this time, I want to dig into some of those main challenges that I hear finance teams are up against, and crucially, what sits behind those challenges as the root causes, before moving on to how you can transform those processes using technology to help you to spot, adapt, and take action when you see the early signs of change, so that you can gain a competitive edge through new ways of working. So first things up, I'd love to learn a little bit more about where you are in your own digital transformation journeys. So I'm going to start a poll on the right-hand side of the screen. I would love for you to take a moment to have a read through the options that are available there, and let me know what relates to you, what really resonates to you. And thank you for those of you that have clicked in. A couple of you said that it's quite expensive. Some of you are already on your digital transformation journey. Other business priorities, of course, we're in a really difficult situation at the moment, and so many businesses are prioritising continuity. Really interesting. And so far, no one said that we're happy with our current systems and processes. So that's a really interesting point there. You know, a lot of you on this webinar today are here to learn a little bit more about what digital transformation really means. And it looks like from these numbers here as well, some of you are already on that journey and just looking to learn a little bit more about how you can continue on that path and streamline your finance operations even further. So really interesting. Thank you for taking the time to answer those for me. So let's get going with what are the challenges that are facing finance teams today. So finance has always had pressures to manage cash flow, cost control, and analyse data, and all of that has to be done in a timely manner to meet end of month, end of quarter, end of year, or all of the other reporting deadlines that they have to contend with. In fact, the majority of chief financial officers say to me that managing cash, and crucially cash flow, is the single biggest priority that they have and can be one of the most complex tasks to do. And with the current situation that we're in, and from speaking with many businesses recently, it is clear that this pressure has increased significantly. Now, with many employees working remotely, and what looks set to continue, to be honest, for the medium term and perhaps much longer, manual processes that have been incumbent in businesses for a long time are starting to show cracks. Employees are actually having to go to offices to go and pick up invoices, some of which that they had no visibility over and couldn't accrue for until that day that they went to pick them up. And I've even spoken to a few companies who have gone into their offices to find overdue invoices sat waiting for payment that they literally had no knowledge of until that day. Teams are unsure about what they can and can't expense for, or even how they should be going about getting approvals for purchases that they might not have done before. Leadership teams don't fully understand what is being spent, security of data is compromised, approval workflows are unclear, untrackable, unauditable. And so we have all of those mounting pressures on top of all of the ones that finance had from before, all whilst trying to manage this new normal and potentially feeling isolated or working at home with kids bouncing off the walls. And with many businesses looking to permanently increase the number of staff working from home and creating a real work from anywhere culture, it's never been more important to think about how your processes and procedures impact your employees' experience. In fact, prioritizing employee experience when considering digital transformation has been proven to increase staff productivity. It delivers 21% higher company profitability and a 24% reduction in staff turnover, thanks to the innovative solutions and services that you can empower your teams with. And we were aware that many businesses had not digitized and automated some seemingly simple finance processes before. But as I say, the current situation has really made this stand out as a significant challenge, which is particularly relevant to the way that expenses and accounts payable invoices are handled. And even before the current situation, 60% of the finance team's time is taken up with managing day-to-day tasks rather than strategy and forward planning. You've got organisations like Bain and McKinsey right now recommending more than ever to be preparing comprehensive 16-week cash flow forecasts to take to your leadership meetings so that you can strategically manage every penny and avoid risks, whilst working on those strategically important initiatives that you would have previously outlined. And as we mentioned before, with many employees look set to continue working from home in the near future and possibly even longer, without digitised processes and with many businesses adopting temporary processes, the amount of time taken over the many manual tasks that they have is going to increase. And there are going to be growing security concerns and an inability to get a true view on your real cash position. Without digitised processes for employee expenses and for invoices, maintaining control is going to become more and more difficult as an organisation, and it's going to increase strain on your finance teams. I was speaking to a business literally just last week who went from having a finance team of 6 people down to only 2 whilst the other 4 were furloughed. And 2 of those people that were furloughed were dedicated accounts payable clerks, meaning that all of the invoice that those 2 used to process on a full-time basis were now suddenly the jobs of the remaining 2 people in that team to do, in addition to all of the normal day-to-day jobs that they had before, and the additional COVID modelling that they've been required to do for their organisations. And so suddenly they started work at 7 a.m, they were finishing up at 9, 10 p.m. that evening, and they were telling me that even that was not enough time to get things done. They were really worried that they were going to start missing something important, that they were going to accidentally pay a vendor twice, maybe they might not pay a vendor at all, the unapproved spending was going to start slipping through the net, and ultimately all of the risk and the accountability was going to stay sat with them. And so in that situation, they really did feel like they were faced with 2 options. It was either keep working late and burn out, miss something important, or automate the processes that could be automated and start a digital transformation within their own organisations. And a similar story as well. I worked with an organisation about a year ago actually now, and their finance team was completely remote anyway, but they still managed their invoices by receiving emails, rekeying PDF images into their finance system, But ultimately, they had no pre-approval process for that spend. They had no controls in place to be able to spot when there was human error being entered. And it was only when the business found itself in a really dire cash position that they audited their spend. And that's when they found out that it was simple slips of the finger while their team were working as quickly as they could through their piles of invoices, that they realised that they had mispaid some of their vendors to the tune of millions of pounds. And they then had to go through a really lengthy refund process to get that money back. And the short and the mid-term impact of that on their cash flow was huge. So again, they knew that if they continued as they were, then the same problems would keep happening. They would grow, the problems would increase. And so they knew that it was the right time to start their journey and digitize their processes. So really, to reframe this here, your organisation that you're at right now could be a small business. It could be mid-sized, it could be large. You could be trying to scale up rapidly, or maybe in this environment, you're actually trying to scale down without significantly impacting your business's continuity. But you could still encounter issues like these because your manual, paper and spreadsheet-based processes do not enable you to keep a finger on the pulse of your cash flow. It doesn't enable you to scale costs or control spending, or ultimately keep your employees working at their optimum efficiency. If you are growth focused right now though, there is a real conversation to be had about how you can control your costs to maximise your profitability. Now, it might not surprise you to hear this, but 66% of businesses that were interviewed in a recent survey we did explained that they wanted to grow their organisations without growing headcount in their finance teams. And in most cases, the fully loaded cost of a new employee can tower over the cost of a new solution to do that role. Or similarly, if you need to suddenly scale down like my client does right now, would you actually be able to do that with the processes that you have today without significantly increasing risk to your organisation or really negatively impacting your employees' experience and satisfaction with their jobs? Digital transformation really isn't about buying new technology because other people are or because you hear about it a lot in the industry at the moment. It's about solving your unique business critical problems and being able to anticipate and mitigate future risks before they start negatively impacting your business with the help of faster access to data insights and better use of existing resources. Now, I have a interesting white paper for you to come and have a look at. You'll see it pop up on the side of the screen now. And it should help to contextualise some of the things that I've just spoken about and give you some ideas about how you can provide yourself some more certainty in these uncertain times by changing the way that you're managing your processes today. So I encourage you to definitely take a look at that when you get a chance. So, how much is your manual process really costing you? Whenever I speak to organisations when they're starting out their review process, this is my first question to them. How much is your process costing you, do you think? And often it's not something that organisations have actually looked into before. And really the simple answer here is it's a lot more than you might think. So to put some numbers behind this for you, we conducted research with a company called AMI Partners. And we explored with a range of different finance directors at different size organisations the main areas that they felt were cost sinks for their organisation. And these are the three that we have brought to you today as the main areas that they highlighted: visibility, risk and compliance, and money and time. So let's take a look at each of those in turn now. So the findings on visibility show that many of your peers struggle with seeing spend clearly. And especially in these times, not having an accurate view on your cash flow is setting your business up for a really bumpy road. Duplicate data, missing data, or simply data that you can't trust is going to really impact you, your forecasts and your planning, as it is for many other businesses right now. How can you possibly come up with a strategic plan to weather out this storm or to achieve your objectives if you are basing decisions on guesswork or on an incomplete understanding of your business's true financial situation? The inability to accurately track spending trends is directly related to data visibility and can result in overlooked errors and missed opportunities for savings. Lack of integration with budgets affects your ability to see how spending is impacting the overall plan. What if one of your departments has really overspent on their budgets, but another department has massively underspent and it doesn't look like they're going to use up the budget that you'd set for them this year. You know, rather than having to find unbudgeted capital for the other department that has overspent, what if you would be able to easily see what the forecast looks like for the department that hasn't spent as much, and you could just move some of that budget over? You know, what would that mean for your business? Rather than having to pay for marketing right at the end of the year, what if you could run a new marketing campaign earlier on in the year because you found that money that you didn't know wasn't being effectively used before? Another story for you here, actually, and this comes from one of my colleagues over in the US. She was previously a finance director for a group of hospitals before she joined SAP Concur. And as you can imagine there, visibility is really important, as is having a slick and effective supply chain. You know, as the hospitals over there use up medicines and supplies, their procurement teams put in orders so that they can restock, and usually the delivery for that new stock happens the same day. And she had a really good team. You know, her team worked really hard and their manual processes worked fine. They didn't have a need to change. Totally wrong. Being a finance director for that group of hospitals meant that she was basically on call 24/7 for any financial emergencies. Doesn't matter if it's Christmas Day, 3 o'clock in the morning, it could be any time that she gets that call and she needs to go and fix that problem. And there was a call that she got in the middle of the night one night to find out that one of their key suppliers had put them in a credit hold. And she was thinking, like, what? How on earth has this happened? This has to be a mistake. There's no way that we should be in a credit hold with the supplier. We work with them constantly all the time. So she went into the office and it turned out that actually the team was really behind on processing invoices. You know, they had some people that had been on holiday, and so the workload had increased. And quite frankly, the paper invoices had gotten lost amongst all the other piles of paper. And it turned out that they actually owed a really considerable amount of money to this particular supplier, and they had absolutely no idea. And now the hospital that they had under their guard had run out of really key supplies, and they were ultimately having patients put at risk because of this credit hold. So the finance director, she had to go and approach the chief financial officer, explain the situation. I have no idea how this has happened, but it's happened. We need to find all of this unbudgeted money right now. And they found it, but it was such a big hit financially that they knew that there was absolutely no way they could risk having something like that happen again, nor risk such an important key relationship with that supplier. So they knew that they had to improve their visibility, and that's what drove them to go and reinvent their accounts payable processes with technology and to drive their own digital transformation. Now, risk and compliance, this is a really interesting one. You know, when we asked organisations for their biggest challenges, 66% cited incomplete documentation as a really big concern. Without proper documentation, you can't validate or track the actual amount of an expense. The fact is, businesses risk fines for non-compliance during auditing if they're not able to locate the correct files or are unable to recognise fraudulent transactions when they are occurring. And some of the other concerns that was highlighted during this study was regulations relating to you know, their specific industries, tax and compliance issues. And actually, just to take a moment on that topic, think about your staff. When they are travelling, obviously when we're able to travel, are they travelling just here in the UK? Or are they venturing out into countries where there may be tax or compliance issues that you're not familiar with, but that you need to be aware of or managing proactively as a business? What about the vendors that you work with? You know, do you work with organisations that are based overseas and receive invoices from them? You know, I was speaking with one of our partners, Taxback International, recently, who had explained that a huge percentage of spend that happens overseas has VAT charged incorrectly on invoices, which either shouldn't have been charged at all and is therefore a fault from the vendor and should be removed. Most businesses have already paid it, but you can go and get that refunded back to you. Or it's been charged correctly, but you're eligible to go and get it back from those individual tax offices in those countries. And what Taxback International were telling me is the majority of businesses do not recover this money at all. You know, they're literally leaving it behind, even though they can get it back. And that usually comes down to the process being really long-winded. It takes a lot of expertise and detailed knowledge about each of those individual countries' tax offices and reclaim processes. You know, if you're working with a vendor, you don't want to have to potentially upset the apple cart asking for a refund back, especially if they're not completely 100% on what the rules are with whether they should or should not have charged you tax. You know, it can be a really difficult thing to do. And if businesses are doing that, but they're doing it manually, then this is going to be super time consuming and again, take away more of that finance precious time from strategic initiatives. Some other risks here: employees submitting non-qualified expenses, fraud and risk management. You know, as these findings show, businesses recognise that if they haven't implemented good practices, they are susceptible to fraud, to budget creep, and regulatory fines and penalties. So at SAP Concur, we process expense claims. You know, we see expenses from all over the world in the order of millions on a daily basis. We have an auditing service where we have auditors that review line items to identify unqualified spending for our clients. And so, as you can imagine, we've seen some pretty interesting expense claims put through. You know, some of the ones that you might have seen already in your organisations are rounds of drinks that maybe shouldn't have been put through. Maybe someone's gone out and had a lobster dinner when they should have really got a meal deal from Boots. You know, things like that, not so bad. But let me ask you this. If your finance team is based here in the UK and you have staff that are travelling overseas, what happens if your staff are submitting expense claims with receipts that are in German or Spanish or Chinese? Can your finance team translate this? Are they all multilingual? How do you know if you're paying for someone's genuine expense claim in that instance, or if that receipt is actually for something else entirely? You know, we even had a client who used to just pay everything. They had their team based here in the UK processing all of the expenses for their global operations. They had staff in pretty much every country, but specifically they had a few members of staff based in Korea. And their team didn't know what was on those receipts, but they trusted their staff. They knew that their staff wouldn't take advantage of the company, right? Well, wrong. Once they'd automated using Concur services, our auditors were able to start translating those receipts. And it was at that point that they found out that there was one individual that was based over in Korea that had been submitting receipts through very, very frequently and had been doing it for years. But those receipts were for fine art purchases, and the business had been funding that person purchasing fine art to then go and sell on. He was committing major fraud. And so that's a really extreme example, but unless you've got the controls in place to be able to fish out that, your business is at risk. And it's not just risk from internal people. We are seeing a really troubling and rising trend of invoice fraud going on right now. So seemingly innocuous invoices coming from suppliers who are totally recognizable for things that you are probably buying right now: paper, business cards, IT equipment. You know, when your team are paying those invoices that look normal, they are funneling your business's funds straight into a fraudster's bank account. And this is a particularly bad problem for charities. You know, if you're going to commit fraud, why do it with a conscience? And this is one of the things that our client Debonair Ambulance had explained to us when they were going through the review process with us, when they were embarking on their digital transformation journey for the way they managed their accounts payable team. They had started to see these types of invoices coming through. And, you know, ultimately they run an air ambulance charity. So their funds come from public funding. And they need to be able to show that all of that money is directly being related to them being able to fly their helicopters and rescue people who need it. And so they'd realised one of the key benefits for them was that they would be able to fish out that fraud before they paid those invoices. And that was going to be so important for them to make sure that they were maintaining control and using the public's funding responsibly. Now, we've already touched on the need to do more with less, especially in this climate. And this comes into stark focus when we look at the costs that are related to time and money. So I'm going to read out some of these numbers here on the screen for you. 65% of the respondents reported that delayed reporting of expenses was a really major challenge for them. Time was wasted in expense audits due to non-compliance. Think about it. How many times have your teams had to call up individuals within your business trying to understand what an invoice was for, why they'd spent so much? You know, they've had expense claims submitted through that have got no receipts attached. You know, that all takes time and takes time away from all the rest of the work that they're doing. We can see here as well that long cycle times as well between submission and reimbursement, that's a really big problem. If your teams are enabled to go and spend using a corporate credit card, then the problem isn't so much on the individual, but on the business, because you'll have those bills that you need to pay, but you might not know what people have actually gone and spent. Or on the opposite side of things, if people have gone and spent their own out-of-pocket cash on their business expenses, they need that money back, and they need it back quickly. And so having a long cycle time can really negatively impact them, especially if they're in a financially difficult situation outside of work. And all of that analysis, by the way, was done before the current pandemic. So, you know, what could these be now? I imagine that they're actually going to be even bigger challenges. But all of these challenges do share a common thread. They result in lost time and lost financial opportunities. So when you want to do more with less and scale with tight resources, this is a problem. You know, when I'm speaking to businesses about their goals, I usually do hear something that's like, well, Natalie, we are looking to grow our sales teams, or we want to increase our revenue by 40% this year, something like that. But when I ask them what's actually holding them back from achieving that right now, I hear one resounding answer, and that's time. There's never enough time. Projects keep dragging out. I usually hear as well, I wish we had an extra month, or I wish we had a Q5. Gosh, think about what Q5 would do for us. You know, the average sales rep spends around 2 hours a month filling out their own expense claim forms. And for those of you in finance on the call today, I imagine that even after they've spent all that time, they're probably sending it through incomplete or incorrect. Multiply up that time across your sales teams, and you could be paying your sales staff weeks worth of wages to fill in Excel forms to be reimbursed, rather than in front of customers driving sales. You know, one of my clients right now that we've just gone through a business case exercise with looks set to save 60 hours a month of sales time for their teams. And that's a whole extra week and a half a month just by automating their expenses process. And suddenly now for them, they're looking at the possibility of actually having a Q5 worth of sales time that they'll be able to play with. And this isn't an isolated case. This is a really typical story about the types of savings that businesses can see through automating. You know, these are traditionally finance-based processes, but they impact the whole organization and deliver really, really key benefits. And those who don't leverage technology here are really missing out, because their competitors that are embracing technology will have the edge. So we do have some return on investment calculators available on our website, and we can share the links for that now. So if you take a look in the offers page, I will pop that up now. Please do go and have a look either now or after this session if you're interested in having a look. So next up, I would love to also take the moment to do another poll. So now that you've heard some of the challenges that your peers are facing, I'd really love to know what, if anything, you're facing right now. So you'll see it just popped up on the right-hand side, just like before. Please do click your answers and let me know what you're thinking. You know, maybe some of you have encountered all of these. Maybe only one or two of you have encountered some of these. Or maybe actually it's something completely different entirely. And if that's the case, please do pop it in the chat box to us, because we'd love to see and hear what you're thinking that might be outside of this list. And again, just a reminder, if you do have any questions on any of this information that we're talking about as we go through, again, pop it in the chat box. It's all sent to me directly, so your colleagues and peers won't be able to see what you're sending. Wow, so just to call out some of these answers that I'm seeing here on the screen, we've got the vast majority of you saying that right now the processes are super time consuming. And that really does resonate with some of the major findings from that study. You're definitely not alone in feeling that. I can see as well staff inefficiency. Well, inefficiency and time consuming processes, they do go hand in hand. I don't think I know of anybody that says, yes, please, I would love more admin to do. So absolutely. Difficulty controlling spend and enforcing policies seems to be another one. You know, maybe this is particularly more relevant for you right now. Maybe your teams aren't entirely sure who they should be going to ask for new equipment for their home offices. Maybe they're buying it straight away and expensing it, or, you know, maybe there's something else that's going on so that you don't have that control. So yeah, thank you again for letting me know your thoughts on that. Really interesting, and really good to see that, well, not good to see, but interesting to see that it's very much in line with the findings of the study. So what can we do to fix these problems? You know, hopefully I haven't filled you with too much dread about your accounts payable processes so far. I think we have a little bit too much of that at the moment. But, you know, there are things that we can do to fix that. And from speaking with many businesses, it is clear that the current situation we're in has been a catalyst for reassessing finance operations to ensure the systems are future fit and robust for any situation, and to help minimise any disruption for their businesses. Many are actually now considering what the new normal will be and what the ongoing normal will be, and whether they are ready as a business for that or not. A recent McKinsey report also referenced that any recovery plan for the economy really does need to be digitally focused, with businesses adopting technology en masse. So what are some of the key benefits that businesses can experience by digitising their finance processes, and indeed, how can this support businesses during this time? So with more and more people working from home, by digitising your processes, you're not going to need paper anymore. You know, you're not going to have to wait for invoices to be received and then approved and then sent back in the post or walked around an office. You don't need your employees to spend valuable time filling out expense claim forms. You know, we've spoken to numerous customers recently, and one of the key factors that they've highlighted is how easy it's been for them to be able to transition to home working, because they'd already set up cloud and automated finance processes. You know, the process for them to transition was seamless. Employees were able to submit their expenses and approve expenses wherever they happened to be, and it would take minutes. You know, invoices could be submitted and processed over the internet and automatically entered into their finance systems to keep their businesses going as usual. And that's whilst management were focusing on the other pressing challenges. You know, the other day I was speaking to a business and they were having to send a courier to offices to go and pick up invoices and then take that to a team member's home to process. You know, there's a huge risk to both of those individuals, especially when you consider we've got customers that are right now processing invoices from the comfort of their gardens even. You know, so there really is a benefit to being able to support your employees first and foremost. Now, you can also get better visibility and control over your spend. You know, getting better data visibility is often one of the top benefits that's experienced by firms after they implement automated travel and expense management solutions. You know, it's the second most highly ranked benefit following time savings. Improved visibility of company spend data has a number of add-on effects. For example, 60% of SMBs using automated solutions state that they are better able to overcome general business challenges thanks to the visibility into spending trends. And that number increases to nearly 70% of firms when they're using SAP Concur. So I'm actually going to read you a little excerpt from what one of our customers, Michael Tinney, who's a finance manager at FBD Insurance, had to say on the subject of visibility. A lot of CPD, continuing professional development, training is paid directly by staff and reclaimed through expenses. So rather than going through the accounts payable process, our learning and development section were not able to get a comprehensive picture of our training expenditures. And now we are easily able to produce a report of training expenditure out of Concur's reporting tool to give them access to the information that they need. And it's interesting that additional visibility and control is helping finance teams to also become profit-making centres for their businesses. And it's shocking for me, actually, when I talk about this with finance teams, they really don't see themselves as profit makers. You know, I always hear it, you know, Natalie, we don't control sales. We just don't control profits. That's sales' job. They sell the contracts, not us. But there are two ways, really, that you can increase profits. You can either increase sales or decrease costs. And automation empowers finance teams to become profit-making centres in their businesses by giving them the visibility into spending to make decisions that reduce costs strategically and ultimately impact the bottom line. So for those of you out there, empower your teams, help them to drive profitability within the business and become really proactive within the organisation. Now, previous studies have shown that 68% of finance leaders aren't confident that employees are compliant with company spend policies. That's a huge number. And actually, if you think about it, if you were to ask one of your team members right now, where would you go to find the travel and expenses policy? How many of them would actually know? How many of them have actually read it? The AMI research that we conducted found that almost half of firms using an expenses solution stated that better compliance and fraud reduction was one of their key and most significant benefits of automation. Because with better visibility and tracking, employees are less likely to submit non-qualified expenses. The risk of missing documentation is also really significantly reduced because of the better data capture and the ease of capturing receipts. The bottom line is, businesses that use travel and expense management software and purchase invoice automation workflows will see a significant decrease in missing documentation. And importantly, firms that are using SAP Concur solutions report a greater than average reduction in lost documents and time to reimbursement. So some really interesting information here. Now, on time and financial, automation has got a really dramatic impact on this. And for finance, time is ultimately the single most valuable commodity. Having time in finance is the difference between being able to finish up work in time for bath time or having to stay late to finish off your month-end reporting. It is the difference between being a reactive team or having the time to dig into your data to find opportunities to improve your company's performance and shift to being a proactive profit-making center within your businesses. Don't just think about this time in the sense of completing tasks by deadlines. Think about this as well in the sense of the longevity of that person's career within your business. Accountancy courses are really long and hard courses completed by totally brilliant, intelligent people with a penchant for number crunching. So the frustration that they feel once they've completed this really difficult course to then go into data entry jobs is real. And in fact, CFOs list high staff turnover and low satisfaction as a really big challenge, especially when you consider that when people leave a business, so does their skill sets. So again, by using technology to drive change and development within your organization's finance team, you're going to improve job satisfaction, and you're going to give your team a real purpose with strategic initiatives. You'll reduce your staff turnover, and ultimately you will be growing your own talent from within. And I really love this quote here from Luke at Red. They're a recruitment agency, and what's more is that not only did they manage to free up that time that you can see here on the screen, but they were also able to really drive strategic cost-saving initiatives with the data that they simply did not have access to before. So one example here, actually, they had gone through an evaluation of the different types of expense claims they were seeing, and they saw that they were spending a huge amount of money on ground transportation, on taxi fares. So it's just people flagging down cabs in London or internationally, wherever they happen to be. And after doing some further analysis and research into it, they've learned that they could make a 20% saving just on that one particular type of expense spend alone by switching to a corporate Uber account. And they went on to go and analyse all sorts of other areas of their spend to identify other opportunities to make strategic partnerships with vendors and get the best rates that they could for their organisations, all thanks to the new data that they had access to that they previously didn't in a manual world. So some food for thought here. SMBs that are using travel and expenses solutions save over £24,000 per year after implementation. And firms that are using Concur Expense report even greater average savings of £31,000 per year. And just to add here, these benefits aren't just for travel and expenses. There is an incredibly similar and as powerful story for when it comes to managing purchase invoices, again, which can also be achieved with SAP Concur. Now, if you have a look in the Offers section on the right-hand side of the screen, I've just popped up another link to our website where you can go and download some really easy, digestible tips and tricks on how you can simplify the way that you're managing your invoice process today. And again, if you want something similar to do with the expenses side of things, let us know in the chat box or after this meeting today, and we'll be happy to signpost you to more information. So how do we do this? The question that you might have is, how does this technology actually work? So by deploying a single, easy to use and integrated platform for managing your spend, and by incorporating time-saving functionalities like optical character recognition to eliminate rekeying, automated online approval workflows that are fully traceable and auditable, comprehensive analysis and detailed reporting into your spend data so that you can get to the source of the truth sooner, and built-in policy control so that you can reduce your risk and ensure compliance, you'll be able to realize the benefits that we've just spoken about. I often ask people when they're going through this process, tell me about what your process looks like today. And it often, to be honest, sounds pretty painful. And I then ask them, what would your perfect process look like? If you could wave a magic wand and deploy something right now, what would it look like? And I always get told, I wish we could just take a picture of some information and have all of that data pulled out for us and have that happen in the background. We want to be able to see all of the anomalies straight away without having to fish through them. If a system could highlight those to us, then that's perfect. We really want that. I usually get told as well, we are growing really rapidly. Maybe we've had some investment from, different organisations. And so we're having to now produce even more complex reporting than we ever had to before. And so being able to have all of that data in one location and already in reports for us, that's going to really help us there. So one of these clear benefits after implementing an automated solution is that it's going to really significantly reduce or eliminate that need for paper as well. I actually have got clients that have come to me saying one of the reasons they're looking to change their processes is they've physically run out of space in their cupboards for more pull-out drawers. Once these documents are actually stored electronically and centrally, they can be accessed and processed and approved with ease from anywhere. And if you ever need to go and retrieve that information, it's so easy to do because you can search for the identifiers rather than having to dig through a filing cabinet. And once you can do all of this, you will have improved data visibility, a smooth approval process, a complete audit trail, and more control over your cash. And that's going to allow you to be really strategic about your financial management, help you to track trends better, spot opportunities for cost reduction, and ultimately be able to peek around the corner to see any risk before it happens. So what could be my next steps for anybody of you that's interested in potentially looking at this a little bit further? So we have a number of different tools that are available on our website for you. I'll leave this up here just in case any of you want to note these things down. Again, I'm going to pop up the link to the return on investment calculator as well for our invoice system. If you want to take a look at that as well, please do. These are quite simple tools for you to use if you want to go through a process of really digging into the nitty-gritty of to exactly what your processes are costing you today and exactly how much you could save with automation. Then please do reach out to us after this session and one of our consultants will be happy to walk through that with you. Now I'm now going to pass back over to Robin to talk through some of the questions that may have come through in the chat box so far today.
Thank you so much, Natalie, for sharing with us. You had some great practical examples that highlight the importance of automation and digital transformation. So thank you very much. So we're going to open to questions from the audience. So to start off, someone has asked, we have about 100 people at our company. Are we too small for this? What do you think, Natalie?
Yeah, great question. Thank you to whoever's asked that. The simple answer here is no. We have teams here at SAP Concur based here in the UK and also over the globe that dedicate in working with small businesses. We've got a mid-sized segment and we've got our kind of large enterprise segment as well. And ultimately the services that we provide are completely scalable. So even if you've got 10 people submitting expense reports a month, or if you've got 10,000, you're going to have a really slick and streamlined process that will work for wherever you happen to be on that scale. So if you were to suddenly grow your company by 200% in 1 year, you're not going to need to suddenly hire additional headcount to manage the influx of those expense claims. Or similarly, if like my client, you're going through a bit of a scale down process at the moment, you're not going to have to divert valuable resources away from processing to handle this. And ultimately, it's the same story with your invoices as well. You know, we can make sure that we have catered our system to be as simple or as complex as you may need, depending on the type of business that you are and the types of invoices that you need to process. So really great question, but ultimately, absolutely not. And if you are interested in having a look at the system in more detail in relation to your specific organisation, then please do get in touch with us. Someone in our team will be more than happy to help out and share some best practices as well for our SMB companies that we've worked with on a really regular basis.
Great, thanks. So just to let all the attendees know, you can post your questions in the right-hand side of the chat and we will get to it. But right now we have another question, which is, what is your advice for teams that are reluctant to change?
Yes, so I would advise you, first of all, to really dig into why they might be reluctant to change. You know, often when I work with organisations, one of the things that their teams are worried about is, if you buy technology in finance that automates processes, am I going to lose my job? And the simple answer is probably not. Unless your business is going through a real drive to actually reduce headcount, 9 times out of 10, your job is secure and you're going to be running that program alongside really expanding your skill set, maybe to cross-train so that you can start working in things like accounts receivable or working to more of a finance business partner role, leveraging that really rich data that you've now got access to. Some people, maybe they're just not as technically minded and they get a little bit worried about using new technology. In that sense, it's really valuable to actually incorporate them as early on in the process when you're considering change as is possible. So there's a really great exercise that you can do with your teams that involves a circular table when you're back in offices in the future and a ball of string. And what I would encourage you to do is to give each person a role within your business. So maybe you'll have a typical expense claimant. Maybe you'll have a line manager, someone in finance, someone that's in the procurement team, whatever it might be, and start off your expense claim process. You know, hold your end of string and pass it to the next person in the chain. And think through some of those scenarios as well, where what happens if this person's out of the office? Who do we need to take this to instead? What happens if weeks have gone by and we haven't had a resolution to this problem? Who do we need to escalate this to? And I can guarantee to you, once you've gone through the nitty-gritty of your processes using that visualization, you're going to have a horrible knot in the middle of your table. And that's a really good way to be able to visualize how you can simplify those processes. And by getting people involved in that early and being able to really show people why it's a problem, you'll notice that you'll naturally start to brainstorm on the right types of processes and ways that you can fix the process. And you'll have people really bought into driving that change with you rather than the reluctancy to change. So great question, thank you.
That's a great idea as well, great answer. Okay, we have another question here. Do you need to use SAP to use your services?
Great question. I get asked this all the time. No, you do not. So we are an SAP company, but we can integrate in with a huge range of different finance systems, CRM systems, timesheeting systems, pretty much whatever your kind of IT infrastructure is, the chances are we will be able to work with it in one way or another. So for those of you on the call that do want to potentially look at this but may have some concerns about the different systems that you're already using today, I'd really encourage you to get some time popped in with one of our consultants and they can talk you through the different integration options available and also make some recommendations based on their expertise as to how they've helped other customers using those exact services and systems as well. All of our guys here are really experienced. We work with literally hundreds of businesses a year going through these review processes. So we will be able to make some really good recommendations for you. And not just to say as well, once you've got the system set up with us, if you choose to change your other systems around it in the future, so maybe you are using Sage today and you plan to move to NetSuite in a month or two's time, don't let that stop you from starting your automation journey with us, because we can reconfigure the systems in a really easy way to stay as a long-term partner for you.
Great, thank you. Let's see, we have another one. What is the typical ROI for this?
Yeah, so we've got different return on investments really that relate to the different solutions that we have. So we've done samples of our own customer base. So for those people who are using our travel and expenses services, you'll typically see a return on investment from 250 to 450%. So it's a really strong return on investment. And that's actually kind of the average range. We do see people getting way higher than that, especially if they're in a situation where maybe right now they're not recovering VAT when they could, or if they've got a large sales team that's wasting a lot of time. When it comes to the invoice process as well, similar sort of story. We had a survey done quite recently into our customer base that showed an average 505% return on investment with a typical 5-month payback period. But again, that can be considerably shorter for a lot of organisations, just purely based on the fact that our services are quick and easy to deploy. Most businesses are up and running within a matter of weeks. So your time to value with a service like this is really good. So hopefully that provides the context there that you are hoping for with that question.
Great. We might have, I think, maybe time for one more question. I don't know if you can see this chat on the right-hand side here,
Yep.
because there's a couple of questions here. So I'm wondering if maybe you want to choose the one that you think you'd like to answer, or is we haven't quite covered.
Yeah, so there's a couple here actually. I'll just touch on a couple of them quickly. So how does this integrate with the main accounting system and chart of accounts and cost centres? This is a nice quick answer for you. When we're setting the system up, we understand the exact kind of layout and format and coding requirements that you have as a business, and we build that into the system for you. So you'll basically have a mirror image within Concur. So if someone's selected a subsistence expense type, then the correct coding in the background will sit behind that. So as finance, you won't have to do any rekeying of that data. I would really recommend actually, for those of you that have that on top of mind, again, definitely reach out to one of the guys here at Concur. We'll be happy to talk through best practices for integrating that into the system. And then another question here with regards to KPIs, so that other departments can see where they stand on the authorising process. This is a really great thing. So not only are you going to be able to see how much you're spending and with who, but you can also see important data like how long is this process taking us. We have a customer who, before they automated with us, their financial controller was really frankly getting it in the ear all the time because they were constantly paying their suppliers late. And because it's finance's process and finance the people that pay, it was finance's fault. But it actually wasn't. The finance controller knew that when those invoices were reaching him fully approved, they were already months overdue. So he knew that the problem was further upstream. And so when they were able to automate with Concur, they could see exactly how long those invoices were sitting in different stages, and were able to then go and drive behavioural change. And that's all available within the reporting suite. We've got a similar thing for expense claims. It's almost like a naughty leaderboard so that you can share it in your leadership meetings. If you have got managers who like to take a long time to approve things, once they start seeing they're the worst at it, suddenly they become the best at it. So definitely you'll be able to use those KPIs to help drive change within your organisations.
Fantastic. Actually, I think we can take one more question if you like, if you want to choose.
Yep, let's go for how long does it take to teach the system to match invoices? Great question. You won't need to teach the system to match invoices. So this is a little bit functional, and without getting too into the weeds on it, if you've got purchase orders, then there's going to be a purchase order number on there. And if you've got invoices that relate to those, then it will search for that corresponding purchase order, and it will then perform a matching process based on that. And it's going to explore things to do with your line items. So if it can see a discrepancy on the line item details, then it will flag that up as a discrepancy for you. So again, this is really going to help you to strategically manage your time so that you are working on an exception basis rather than having to go through 100% of your invoices 100% of the time to try and find small mistakes. So that means that rather than wasting all that time, you can take those anomalies and go directly to your suppliers or to whoever it is internally you need to go to find a resolution.
Fantastic. Well, I think we're coming to the end of our session. I want to thank all of you for taking some time out of your day to join this webinar with Executive Leaders Network and SAP Solutions Specialist, Natalie Wignall. You've been fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, and thank you everybody on the line for your attentiveness today.
Fabulous. Just to let all attendees know, you will receive an email with the replay links. Natalie, is there any last information that you perhaps want to share to our attendees?
Yeah, absolutely. So just wanted to say again a really big thank you from all of us here at SAP Concur. Hopefully you found the session beneficial. If you do have any questions, any queries, or any further information that you want from us, please do go to our website and fill in a contact form, or just send me an email. My contact details are right there on the screen, and I'll be happy to help you out or direct you to the most appropriate person within our organisation to help you with those questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Natalie, SAP, and all who joined us today. And we really look forward to hosting you again.
Thank you. And thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.